and welcome to Dispel Magic, the podcast where we overthink how the magic of D&D might shape your campaign setting in surprising and unexpected ways. I'm Benjamin, game designer and writer.
And my name's Dane. I'm a dungeon master, podcaster, and voice actor. Benjamin, we have a mainstay of Dungeons and Dragons on the show today, don't we?
That's right. We are taking a pivot from our typical fare of spells and going with a classic magic item that is probably the first magic item handed out in most campaigns.
Well, it's essential because a lot of folks don't want to deal with the nitty-gritty of weight and how much things fit into where, and so they're gonna want the standard video game, everything in one place.
Yeah. It also facilitates antics,
Yes.
So I think that's another allure to, you guessed it, the bag of holding.
Was that the first time you said it?
Yeah.
Oh,
that was the big reveal.
That was the big reveal.
The prestige.
Whoosh.
Yeah, exactly.
People
gasped.
Yeah.
People listening gasped when I said bag of holding.
It's almost a given that you're going to get a bag of holding. I feel like I've played in games where people are just like, we don't already have one when they find one.
I think from a DM's perspective, you can give a bag of holding and you're not really changing the math of the game at all. You're giving players something that feels like a fun reward, but you're not worried that you're going to imbalance the game.
Right. Well, let me run down the specifics of it. Bag of holding is a wondrous item of uncommon rarity. It does not require attunement, and its description is as follows. This bag has an interior space considerably larger than its outside dimensions, roughly 2 feet in diameter at the mouth and 4 feet deep. The bag can hold up to 500 pounds, not exceeding a volume of 64 cubic feet. The bag weighs 15 pounds regardless of its contents. Retrieving an item from the bag requires an action. If the bag is overloaded, pierced, or torn, it ruptures and is destroyed, and its contents are scattered in the astral plane. If the bag is turned inside out, its contents spill forth unharmed, but the bag must be put right before it can be used again. Breathing creatures inside the bag can survive up to a number of minutes equal to 10 divided by the number of creatures, minimum 1 minute, after which time they begin to suffocate. Placing a bag of holding inside an extra-dimensional space created by a handy haversack, portable hole, or similar item instantly destroys both items and opens a gate to the astral plane. The gate originates where the one item was placed inside the other. Any creature within 10 feet of the gate is sucked through to a random location on the astral plane. The gate then closes. The gate is one way only and can't be reopened.
Boom.
Very specific.
Yeah.
Let's go down the expected uses. What we think of when we think of a bag of holding.
I think the reason DMs give this out is basically so that, not that I think a lot of people ever worry about encumbrance anyway, but this kind of eliminates even the worry that you might have to, because all of a sudden you've got an extra 500 pounds that you can just kind of...
It makes everyone's job easier. It makes the player's job easier. It makes the DM's job easier. It's just one less thing to track, one less thing to worry about. And also, I feel raises the stakes, right? Because if you have everything in one place and that bag goes away,
yeah,
you boned.
It's kind of funny because I think what we're saying is completely accurate, that people give it out as a way of giving people less stuff to track. But the magic item sort of explicitly wants you to track the pounds that you're putting in there, because it gets destroyed if it ever exceeds 500 pounds.
Right. And we're going to circle back around that later. I also feel like they do that just so it's not limitless. I know that adventurers, when they find a dragon hoard, they're going to be like, we just put the whole dragon hoard in our bag.
They could have just said, after 500 pounds, you can't put anything else in it.
Yeah, but they make it fun.
So it was a specific choice to say, like, you lose everything if you don't specifically track the pounds that you're putting into this But I again also think nobody, just like nobody plays with encumbrance, I
Mhm.
would guess over half of the people who are using bags of holding are not tracking how much is inside of it.
100%. Now, the bag of holding, obviously, people are going to be using bags of holding to transport goods.
Right.
That's a no-brainer.
Yeah. So moving away from kind of the reason that bags of holding exist in D&D, the game, into what bags of holding do in a setting, is that one of the first things that came to my mind is that probably when an adventurer finds a bag of holding, first thing they're thinking about is how much money they're going to be able to sell this for.
Mm.
Because it's an uncommon magic item. It's probably, like, by the book, one of the cheaper things to buy or sell in terms of at least magic items. Merchants guilds would love to just snap up every single bag of holding that kind of comes into the magic item market, because
They're on back order for months.
right, I mean,
They're PS5s.
yeah, right, exactly. I crunched some numbers and I looked up how much a horse can generally carry, and that's 400 pounds, right? So you could load up a horse with 26 bags of holding,
Wow.
which would be 13,000 pounds of goods on a horse versus the normal 400 pounds you could carry. It, like, really exponentially eases the burden of transporting goods. We've talked on a previous episode about teleportation circle, and to me this is also something where it's like, yeah, it makes that, like, 6 seconds that the teleportation circle is open all the more valuable when you can carry 13,000 pounds on a single horse
Yeah.
through the teleportation circle.
And forget about carts with wheels. Oh boy.
Right, exactly. Like, there's no need if you've got enough. So I really see the Merchants Guild as being the primary organization or faction in a setting that's going to be interested in obtaining bags of holding, and primarily for this use as cargo. And I think they would be willing to offer very high prices because of how much this is ultimately going to reduce their cost of operations.
Well, and as we often do, this kind of makes me think of a bureaucracy where bags of holding are then tracked. They're limited. If it's a free market, then yeah, the most powerful merchant is going to buy as many bags of holding, keeping them from competition, keeping them from them expanding. So if there is a government in place that is more egalitarian and wants more people to have more of a shot, then they're like, all right, you are a merchant of this size, or the Merchants Guild is allowed an allotted number of bags of holding. And
that's like such a utopian.
no,
I mean,
hey, call
take
me
on
a
that,
dreamer. You may call me a dreamer.
I have to, I mean, in my mind, the first thing that this facilitates is, like, yeah, one Merchants Guild quickly dominates
Yeah.
all the others, and then there's a single global Merchants Guild because they're using bags of holding and teleportation circles to move so many goods
Left and right.
yeah, that screw local governments. Like, this Merchants Guild is like
Supreme.
its own nation, basically embedded in others.
We've talked about fantasy Amazon before, and this is just one aspect of their evil empire.
Yeah. And of course, whatever is attractive to Merchants Guilds is probably also going to be attractive to Thieves Guilds.
Mm-hmm.
For most of the same reasons. Thieves Guilds, other criminal enterprises, are going to be interested in using this also for the transportation of goods, but more like along the lines of smuggling than, I guess, kind of openly transporting cargo.
You're not going to have a pack horse of an entire stolen house. All the worthwhile goods of the inside of a house.
Well, you might, right? If the Thieves Guild hit a noble's house
Mm-hmm.
and was able to get all of the goods they stole from that house out of the city in one night,
Insane.
you could do that with enough bags of holding, like rob them blind,
Mm-hmm.
put all of their stuff in bags of holding,
Teleportation circle to a far off town,
or even just a horse, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like, by the time the noble wakes up the next morning, everything's gone and nobody is in town anymore who actually committed that crime.
I mean, this kind of makes another dungeon-esque type of situation, right? To keep people out of your house. So your house isn't now in the middle of the dungeon. Yeah, I wonder what kind of security measures have to be created to prevent somebody from just clearing out your house with one bag of holding. It's hard to imagine.
Yeah, I
Hard
mean,
to
like
think about.
random like switchblade that pops out on an
Yeah,
item
things to tear.
that it punctures the bag of holding and the person just loses everything. Although that doesn't save your stuff because it's all going to get dumped in the astral plane then.
Yeah, that's true. Magic items can't be burned, correct?
You know, I wouldn't think so. I think I'm not sure if I know the general rule about it, but it's weird to me that this one specifically mentions being punctured.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't think like mundane weapons could puncture it. I'm not sure what it would take to puncture a bag of holding. I'm not sure that there are like written rules for destroying magic items in 5e.
Feel like, and maybe again, this is a critical role thing, but I feel like magic items can't be burned or destroyed without magical means. Is something that I feel like I've heard before.
I'm sure that that's true.
Okay.
But also, even in that case, you're not going to say, oh, you got caught in that fireball, your bag of holding is
true.
burned. So they're even more resilient than that.
So maybe you have to use like a +1 dagger to be able to puncture it or something.
At minimum,
Yeah.
let's leave it at minimum, you would need a magic item to destroy another magic item, but probably it would be some kind. I don't know. It's weird that this says puncture because there's not really any guidance about.
There's no precedent.
Yeah.
Guide us. Sure. Now here you talk about liquid.
Right. So the magic item description to me kind of indicates that it can't hold liquid because it doesn't say it takes whatever you put in it and puts it in an extra dimensional space or something. What it says is that it's bigger on the inside than on the outside, and you normally can't put water in a bag.
It's true. Unless it's a water sack, sure.
But it seems like a really common trope though, or not common, but not uncommon to like fill up your bag of holding with water. I asked this question on Twitter: in your games, can you put loose uncontained liquids in a bag of holding? And the result was something like 85% of people said yes, you can.
Mm-hmm.
And one really compelling response I got to this in the replies was the description of the item suggests that it's airtight, you know, because you run out of oxygen if you stuff people inside.
100%.
So if it's airtight, it has to be watertight.
Because it's mentioned so many times, I feel like the bag has a connection to the astral plane. It doesn't say it's connected to the astral plane.
Right.
There's not enough lore in the item description for that. So I can imagine, well, this is DM's discretion. We're in DM's discretion realm here when we're talking about airtight. We're talking about
we know it's airtight. I mean,
we do know it's airtight.
The magic item tells you it's airtight, and so if it's airtight, it does have to be watertight. Water couldn't leak out of something that was airtight.
True.
So you can carry liquids in a bag of holding. So then the question becomes, what would you do with 60 gallons of water? Because that's the amount of water you can keep in a. I mean, the first thing I'm thinking of is that it would be really fun to get dropped into like a water trap where you're supposed to drown or something, and you just open a bag of holding at the bottom and suddenly
and you fill up your bag,
you're standing in a dried out pool.
Well, and that's a fun way to a loophole in if a room's slowly filling with water.
Yeah,
it affords you an extra second, an extra minute or whatever it is. I've had players fight vampires with running water.
There you go.
Create and destroy water. So this could be an excellent tool against vampires.
Yeah, that's a really cool combat application for it. I also think as a utility to be able to just create 60 gallons of water in a moment, it solves a lot of problems you might have. Like if there's a big ditch you need to cross, or I mean, there's a ton of situations. Dumping 60 pounds of water on somebody's head is probably going to disorient them pretty badly, to say the least.
Push them at least an amount of feet.
Knocked prone, push 10 feet maybe.
If they're a fire genasi,
there you go.
Really dampen their day. But you do make a good point that it's all at once. There is no dipping a ladle into this. There's no, I've always imagined bags of holding where you have to imagine what the item is in the bag. You have to know what it is. So grabbing water isn't gonna, you're not
Right.
just imagining water and grabbing it. So it has to be all or nothing. It's
Well, I think you could do it with a ladle. Like,
You
I mean, a
think so?
ladle. Well, yeah, I do
You'd
think you could
allow
do. I would allow you to ladle out water. So that's funny because then, like, you could put a bunch of soup, and you could just be like somebody who goes around feeding people with soup out of your bag of holding.
That's a character concept, right?
That is a character concept. So
Soup
feel free
lady.
to keep. Yeah, right. Like it's a halfling. They've got their famous chili or stew or something, and they go around dishing it out to everybody.
It's a halfling named Stu.
There you go.
Who ladles it out. Probably a druid. Now, I've thought about what can you do with an alchemy jug in one of these, and we don't generally mix and match around these parts, but I couldn't help myself.
You could dump a disgusting amount of. I mean, any amount of mayonnaise in my mind is disgusting.
You just set it up for, this is what I'm doing today. And you use that alchemy jug and you fill up the bag of holding with as much mayonnaise as you can. Now we talk about water pushing people back. 60 gallons of mayonnaise.
I have to imagine mayonnaise is heavier by the gallon than water, so probably
true.
it's less than 60. But I also, the less I think about gallons of mayonnaise, the better.
Fair enough.
We'll leave it at that. So that pretty much covers the first paragraph, and it's kind of amazing that when we're talking about a magic item, we can spend that much time just talking about one of 3 paragraphs.
It's an amazing item.
It is
wondrous
amazing,
even.
It is amazing. Yeah, it's a wondrous item. But the second paragraph adds a lot more interesting,
applications.
Weird application. Interesting and weird application.
Hey everybody, Dane here, just wanting to say thank you for all the support you've given us through your downloads, messages, tweets, and of course, sharing the show with others. Word of mouth is the best way for us to grow, so thank you for that. Benjamin and I would also like to announce that we now have a Patreon. You can vote on future shows, receive weekly show notes, you gain access to our Patreon-only Discord channel, and other magical things in the future. Thank you again for listening, and as always, happy spelling.
One of the first things it says is that if the bag of holding is overburdened, it throws everything that's inside of it into the astral plane, right? So I was talking about this with some buddies of mine, and this is pretty gruesome, but one thing you could do is fill your bag of holding up with 499 pounds worth of stuff, probably like rocks, because
easy to weigh, easy to find.
Yeah, and you don't want to lose any of your good stuff. Fill it up with 499 pounds worth of stuff, and then throw the bag over someone's head.
Oof. That's gonna destroy the bag. That's gonna destroy the head.
Right. You're gonna have a bunch of rocks and this person's head floating around in the astral space. What's kind of interesting about that is that the bag is also destroyed. So there's like no evidence of how this crime happened. There's just like a headless body, and there's no one who looks at it has any way of knowing how that happened. And of course, because it's headless, you also can't speak with dead.
I'd imagine the point where the head has come off of the body is kind of a tear, like it's a tearing. If the bag is sucked into the astral plane with the contents, then the head is essentially torn off of the body.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super interested in the exact mechanics. I think a DM can flavor that however they want. Like, to me, I almost picture it as being like instantaneously cauterized or something. I don't know why, but that's just maybe because that would be less disgusting.
I bring it up only in that if you're using this as a tool for murder in a mystery campaign, and there's no evidence of the head, there's no evidence of the bag anymore, players are going to want to know, like, how was it severed, right? So you have to think about how...
That's true. Yeah, how you're going to give them clues about that. So I don't know why, but I think maybe just the amount of time we're spending talking about this is that it makes
about the head coming off.
Yeah, it makes me think about somebody who somehow has accumulated multiple bags of holding become a serial killer, and like this is their signature calling card. Is like this is how they do their crime.
They'd have to be a part of a merchant's guild at that
exactly.
point.
Well, yeah, that's I think where these these
A cool
interesting
plot.
these interesting ideas start to intersect. Yeah, you have the Merchants Guild be, and then players like, how did he get this head ripped off? And then maybe the Merchants Guilds are complaining that like the Thieves Guilds are stealing all their bags of holding.
Like a bunch of
And
thieves.
right, exactly. And but actually it turns out that maybe the head of the Merchants Guild is a serial killer or something.
It's season 2 of The Wire.
I've never seen The Wire, so I'm just gonna have to trust you on that.
It is. It's
Okay.
exactly the same.
All right. Well, spoiler alerts for season 2 of The Wire. So apologies that Dane did that to anybody who's
Yeah, for a 20-year-old
wanting to watch The Wire season 2 and now knows that it's a bag of holding serial killer.
Yeah, it's a bag of hoarding. Yeah.
Right. So
Low oxygen.
yeah, I feel like we've done everything we can about the grisly murders that you can commit. Although we're going to talk about more clean murders you can do later.
Thank
But
God.
in the interim, let's talk about oxygen and what it means that there's a limited amount of oxygen in a bag of holding at any given time. The one thing I thought of was if the inside of the bag can run out of oxygen, does that mean everything inside is essentially vacuum sealed? And food lasts quite a long time if it's vacuum sealed. And I guess actually bodies would too. So like if you were trying to keep a adventuring companion in good condition while you tried to return them to wherever to get them resurrected, you might do that.
I mean, that has application for transporting goods. So spoilable goods last longer doing this. If you don't have access to a transportation circle, then you're going to have to transport it over long periods, long areas. So yeah, it's something to consider. In terms of regeneration of oxygen, I would say it regenerates oxygen when you open it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that is an interesting thing that's not explicitly spelled out, but I do think I did more math, which I'm really good at.
Yeah, it is a math-centric episode.
Really good at math. And by weight, you can fit about 10 halflings inside of a bag of holding, and they'll each survive for about a minute. But you're right. It seems to suggest that whenever the bag is opened, air is flowing into it. So I would think as long as you keep that bag open, there's no length of time. I guess maybe the only problem would be that something could fall into your bag, then put it over 500 pounds, and then
you're toast.
Yeah, and then everybody's inside is gone.
Everyone, all 10 of the halflings,
yeah,
the whole family.
But the big thing I was thinking, I mean, so there's obviously, if you had 10 halflings in a bag of holding, there's a lot of things you could do with that would be fun. One of them would be you can sneak people in to places really easily. All you have to do is you're one person who's really good at stealth. They go in a place and then dump everybody else out of the bag of holding once they get there. But another thing I thought is that it's a way to short circuit various hazards. Imagine a crew of halflings piloting an airship. The airship's going down. Don't worry, we've got a bag of holding. Everybody hop inside. And
the emergency bag of holding.
Yeah. So they all jump inside. Maybe there's a wizard there that casts Featherfall on themselves so that they can open the bag once they all land. And the halflings are all safe. And
that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking of subversive attack. A couple of spies with 10 more people in their bag getting behind enemy lines, and suddenly you've got a battalion there of trained killers.
Yeah, it's kind of like almost what we talked about with teleportation circle, but more guerrilla. All you need is one person to be in an area, and all of a sudden you can dump 10 more people in that area.
A little more chaotic and a little more fun comes to mind is kobolds and goblins.
Right.
You stuff it with kobolds and goblins and you wreck house.
I said halflings because I feel like that's something player characters do more often.
Sure.
But yeah, it would be fun to have like a villain who like carries around a bag of holding filled with kobolds or goblins.
They're just rats. Just a bag of rats.
That would be a lot of rats.
The pack rat would be what they're called. And they've got like 4 or 5 bags of holding just lousy with rats, and they're just dumping them out. Oh, I don't want to talk about this anymore. When I was reading through the notes, it also made me think that because smuggling would become such an issue, and because adventurers generally have one of these, I think customs would be a much more rigorous process. I feel that entering a big enough city, you'd need to dump out your entire bag of holding. You'd be required to.
It really depends. In the DM, there's a very kind of ostentatious illustration accompanying the bag of holding. And if all bags of holding look like that, then yeah, probably.
With this little smiley face on it.
Assuming that there's a variety of bags of holding and they're not always blatantly obvious the nature of it, then that might not happen, or probably wouldn't happen.
You'd have to pass some deception checks. Of course, this is not a bag of holding. But if I guess what I'm thinking of is there'd have to be a whole, depending on how busy your town is, there'd have to be an entire section devoted to going through these bags of holding. Because if you're dumping it out and it's any amount of stuff, you're going to have the space to put it. So I see like these lots set up with bureaucratic checkers going through, dumping out bags, going through the contents.
But why? What are they looking for?
For smuggled goods for goblins and halflings.
But I don't think of D&D worlds as having like rich customs.
I think that if smuggling is an issue and you have bags of holding, then that's what the customs people are looking for, is smuggled goods.
I can imagine police stopping people, maybe like the town's guard stopping people and being like, let me see what's inside that, just to like make sure that you are a legitimate owner or whatever of a bag of holding. Maybe the Merchants Guild that like buys all these also gives like licenses to people to carry bags of holding. And so if you don't have a license to carry the bag of holding, you're assumed to be a smuggler and it's confiscated by the government.
Makes things a lot more complicated, but it also makes there's more intrigue to that, right? Because there's more obstacles to get around. There's more.
Well, and it means you either snuggle up to the Merchants Guild to get a license, or you forge a license, or you have a confrontation with the law about the fact that you've got a bag of holding with no license.
It makes getting that first magic item a little more interesting rather than just, here, just have it, just take it, go on your adventure. God damn it. Now you got to make some choices. You've got to wheel and deal a little bit. You've got to figure out how you're going to get this almost essential item.
I think in this setting where the Merchants Guild controls the majority of
everything,
bags of holding, and everything, I think you can imagine that like if you go on an adventure, you find a bag of holding, you come back to town, they're like, sure, we'll issue a license free of charge. All you have to do is say that when you die, that bag of holding is ours.
Easy.
There you go.
Just do it.
And that's like sort of a cost-free way of them starting their big collection of bags of holding. Although I guess actually in order for there to be licenses, so there has to be a lot of bags of holding. So,
bags of hoarding.
There you go.
There is one particular bag of holding setup.
Yes.
Big weaponized bag of holding that's pretty well known.
Yeah, this last paragraph sets up shenanigans for when you're willing to sacrifice a lot for a victory. The last paragraph is setting you up for that. One thing I thought when I read this is that I hadn't really read the description of the bag of holding in a while. And when I read this, I was like, why have I never given people a bag of holding and a portable hole then? This is an amazing decision to put in your players' laps. I'm just like, yeah, you can win a fight. It's going to cost you a lot.
It's a big red button.
Yeah.
We're, of course, talking about the arrowhead of total destruction.
Well,
let them gasp. Let them gasp. We just revealed. We did the reveal. Let them gasp. All right, go ahead.
Okay, this is actually a core part of the way the magic item works. Just the arrowhead of total destruction is a specific implementation of that, where when I first saw it, I thought, okay, this means you've got to have a PC willing to sacrifice themselves to do this. But there is a meme kind of concept out there called the arrowhead of total destruction. You can find that just by Google searching the arrowhead of total destruction. And it's a weaponized version of incorporating the bag of holding and portable hole into an arrow-shaped weapon that, when it strikes something, the two collapse into each other, the portable hole and the bag of holding, creating that 10-foot one-way gate to the astral plane. So if you are a not very clever or prepared party and you are in a fight way over your heads, you can choose, if you've got these two items or some combination of these two items, to win the fight at the cost of those items. And
it's a win button.
And the character. But if you're prepared, if you know you're going up against the big bad, I mean, like, one thing I'm thinking of is like, could you beat a Tarask with this? I think you could. Like the Arrowhead of Total Destruction, I'm pretty sure you could just go up to the end boss of a whole campaign and be like, I'm first level, I want to be 15th. I'm gonna shoot this arrow at you, and all of a sudden I've got like 1,000,000 XP that I just gained.
I'm just thinking of the coin sound from Mario. That's just you hit it with the arrow and it's ba-ding, ba-ding,
But like,
ba-ding,
yeah,
ba-ding.
yeah, like more like when you hit a shell and it's like going between two blocks that's constantly producing.
That's right.
Yeah,
It's a game.
it's an incredible decision to get to make.
It is a big decision. It is.
That's, I think, super fun. I much prefer it as you being forced to make that Pyrrhic victory decision of so and so is going to sacrifice themselves to stand right next to the big bad and slam these two magic items together. I think that's a cooler situation.
Because the arrow idea necessitates a sure shot, a good roll.
Well, not really. You have to be within 10 feet of something. I would be pretty generous with, you have to hit the ground. Like, what's the AC of the ground? 1.
Okay. Yeah, that's true.
Like, so you just have to hit the ground near this creature.
I'm thinking now that if this is a known item in your world, if this is a known setup in your world, and the ubiquitous Merchants Guild,
right,
capital M, capital G, then portable holes, haversacks would become, I think, illegal.
And that is funny. I had not thought about.
If this is such a potent combination and it is known to create this effect, then they want to mitigate that effect as much as possible from happening.
And maybe even beyond that, it gives the Merchants Guild even more political power beyond what all the wealth that it generates from having all these bags of holding, because now they can also just hold over the threat of like immediate annihilation.
They've got the button. They've got the big button, and they're going to threaten. We've got a lot of these arrows, and then you get a Cold War going between two Merchants Guilds, and how many arrowheads of total destruction they've stockpiled.
Or like more terrifying, if there's just one Merchants Guild, it becomes this weird de facto, I hate saying the world government because but
that's kind of what it could turn into.
It's like almost, I mean, it's maybe more accurate would be that it's end stage capitalism, like where profit driven corporate enterprise is in complete control.
Of dominated like all
governments. I mean, like at that point, what is the difference between the Merchants Guild and every single government it interacts with?
Thanks
basically
a lot.
None, because they all have to do what the Merchants Guild wants.
Thanks a lot, Bag of Holding. Way to ruin the world, Bag of Holding.
It's true. This
sucks.
This magic item might be the worst.
See, now I don't know how to transition from that.
I don't even want to transition after that. I just want to end this episode and go cry.
I think that's probably the best idea. If you have any ideas for Bag of Holding uses beyond the complete annihilation of free speech and free movement and freedom, let us know on Twitter. We're at Dispel Magic Pod. Benjamin, where can people find you?
You can find me at Sterling Vermin on Twitter or sterlingvermin.com on the internet.
Wow, a webpage. And you can find me at Dane in Danger on Twitter. I also have a link tree with all my other things that I do. It's true.
You're going to love it.
Oh, man. I'm going to love it.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again after your next long rest.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Dispel Magic. If this has inspired any ideas for your game, or you have another take on today's topic, please let us know on Twitter at Dispel Magic Pod. You can find Benjamin at Sterling Vermin and Dane at Dane in Danger. Thank you to Slim Mittens for our cover art, produced by Benjamin Huffman, produced and edited by Dane Fox-McGraw.